All right, let's dive into Michelle Obama's The Light We Carry.
Yeah, it's quite a read.
It really is. We're going to be pulling out some wisdom about, resilience and hope and how to navigate this crazy world that we're living in.
Definitely.
But, we want to make this really practical, right? We're going to focus on things that I think are going to resonate with you guys out there, especially if you're interested in learning new things quickly, or maybe you're fascinated by different perspectives, or you just love those aha moments, like those moments where something just clicks,
It's really about taking those personal stories that she shares.
Oh, yeah.
And turning them into broader principles you can use in your own life.
Exactly.
For instance, she's got this one story about her dad and his struggle with MS.
Oh, yeah, that was a powerful one. And what really struck me was it's less about the physical limitations, what MS does to you physically, and more about how that experience shaped her view of how to deal with the world when you're carrying something that you just can't control.
Absolutely. And it's something so many of us can relate to, right? Whether it's, because of your race, your gender.
Your background.
Your background, yeah, yeah. Or just personal challenges. Anything that makes you feel different, Makes you feel like you have to put in that extra effort just to exist, to move through the world.
Yeah. She talks about this idea of counting the steps, always being aware of the obstacles and calculating the energy that's needed to get around them.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that? You're just constantly sizing up your surroundings, planning your every move.
Oh, totally. And she's very honest about how exhausting that can be, right?
Yes.
That kind of vigilance.
Yes. Mentally, emotionally, it's a reality for a lot of people. Anyone who doesn't quite sit into that neat little box of what's considered, quote unquote, normal or expected.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So switching gears a bit, there's this part in the book where she talks about knitting. And it really surprised me. She talks about knitting as a coping mechanism during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, knitting. I would have never thought of that.
Me neither.
It's a perfect example of what she calls going small, right? When everything around you feels huge and overwhelming, problems feel too big to handle. Focusing on something small, something you can actually manage. It's incredibly grounding.
I get that. It's like creating this little pocket of order and control.
Exactly.
When everything else feels like chaos.
Exactly.
But isn't there a danger in that? If we focus too much on going small, could that distract us from tackling those bigger, scarier issues that are out there?
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's not about burying your head in the sand or anything.
Right.
It's more about recognizing, we can't always be on, right? You can't always be fighting those big battles.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you need to recharge.
Right.
You need to reset. And those smaller activities, those hobbies, they can really help with that.
Okay, I'm with you. So it's like a strategic retreat, not a surrender.
Exactly, yeah.
All right. Let's talk about fear. That thing that can just completely paralyze us.
Oh, yeah.
Love the story Michelle Obama shared about her childhood in gymnastics.
Oh, yeah.
She was completely inspired by Nadia Comaneci, those perfect 10s at the Olympics. And, she decided she wanted to be a gymnast too. But she quickly realized that her body it wasn't built for it.
It wasn't happening.
And you know what I loved about that story? She was so brave to admit it, to recognize her own limitations. I think that's a great lesson for all of us, Sometimes what we want to do, what we aspire to, it doesn't always line up with our strengths.
It's a tough lesson.
It is.
But it's an important one.
Absolutely.
It's about realizing that, failure, it's part of the process. It's not the opposite of success.
It's how you get there.
It's how you get there. It's a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama, she didn't become an Olympian.
Right.
But that experience, it taught her some really valuable stuff.
Yeah.
About pushing her limits, getting past fear, learning from those setbacks.
Absolutely.
And it gave her the confidence to actually find the things she was naturally good at.
Okay, now she brings up this idea of comfortable fear.
Comfortable fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued by that. What do you think she means by that?
I think it's about, those moments where you feel that healthy fear.
Yeah.
The kind that pushes you a little outside your comfort zone, but it doesn't, totally shut you down.
Right. Right.
When her mom encouraged her to try new things, even when those things seemed a little scary, Remember she went to Princeton?
Oh, right. Yeah.
That must have been, a little daunting at first.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
That reminds me of this one time when
It's natural to feel fear, but we don't have to let it control us. We can actually use it, right? Use it as fuel to move us forward.
Maybe fear is actually a sign that we're on the right track.
Oh, I like that.
That we're actually challenging ourselves, stepping outside that safe little bubble of the familiar.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's a sign that you're growing, that you're willing to embrace the unknown.
So there's this funny little story she tells about her friend Ron.
Ron.
And Ron, every morning, he greets himself in the mirror.
Okay.
Very kindly. He says, "Hey, buddy," to his reflection.
Wait, what? Hey, buddy.
Yeah. It's so simple, but it really speaks to the importance of self-compassion. Instead of starting the day by, like, criticizing yourself.
Beating yourself up.
Yeah. Yeah, he chooses to greet himself with kindness.
I love that.
Acceptance.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that we all deserve a little grace.
Especially from ourselves.
Especially from ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's about changing that inner dialogue from judgment to encouragement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And she connects this to something Toni Morrison said about lighting up for children.
Oh, yeah.
Like Morrison talked about how kids, they're looking for that spark, that joy and recognition in the adults around them.
Mm-hmm. And it's our responsibility to meet them with that light, with gladness, not criticism.
So it's like we can light up for ourselves, too.
Exactly.
We can choose to greet ourselves with kindness and compassion.
Right.
Even when we don't feel perfect.
Even when we're not feeling adequate, yeah.
And then she talks about friendship.
Oh, yeah, friendship.
And she really beautifully explores this through the story of her friendship with Danielle.
That's such a great example of how these meaningful connections can form in the most unexpected places.
Like at their daughter's basketball game.
Yeah, exactly. And how those connections, they can grow and evolve over time.
Yeah. And the importance of vulnerability and authenticity in building those strong, supportive friendships.
Michelle Obama talks about how their friendship, it deepened when Danielle shared a really personal story that she had kept hidden for years.
Yeah.
About her father being incarcerated.
Wow.
She had carried that shame and that secrecy for so long. And by sharing that vulnerability with Michelle Obama, it created a much deeper level of trust and intimacy.
Exactly.
In their friendship.
It reminds us that, real friendship, it's about showing up for each other.
Yeah.
Not just in the good times, but when things get tough too,
Yeah.
By creating a safe space for each other to share our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities.
That's where the deeper, more meaningful connections come from.
Exactly.
And isn't it interesting how she talks about friendship as a source of home?
Yeah.
Especially in a world that often feels so isolating and disconnected. She calls her close friends her kitchen table.
I love that.
Like this group of people she can always count on.
Yeah.
For support, for laughter, for a sense of belonging.
It's such a powerful image.
Isn't it?
It speaks to that basic human need for connection, for belonging, for being part of something bigger than ourselves.
She really emphasizes the importance of actively seeking that connection, putting yourself out there, being willing to be vulnerable.
Even when it feels scary.
Even when it feels scary.
Because the rewards, they far outweigh the risks,
Absolutely. Okay, we can't talk about Michelle Obama's book without talking about love and relationships.
Oh, yeah.
She offers some really great insights into her own marriage, and she highlights, the importance of working through disagreements and accepting that love, well, it's not always easy.
It's not a fairy tale.
No.
Right.
It's not picture perfect.
Right. She talks about how her early ideas about love were shaped by, romantic ideals, fairy tales, all that stuff.
Right.
Her experience with Barack, it taught her that real love, true love, it takes effort.
Compromise.
Yeah, compromise and a willingness to, to navigate those messy in-between spaces where things aren't always smooth sailing.
And she even shares a story about their first Christmas together in Hawaii.
I remember that one.
Which was a far cry from her initial expectations.
She was expecting romantic beach strolls, metes.
Yeah.
But the reality was, a little different.
A cramped apartment.
It's a family time.
Not exactly the idyllic Christmas getaway she had in mind.
Nope.
But, ultimately that experience, it revealed something really important about Barack's character and his values.
Wow.
And it strengthened their bond.
It's a good reminder that love isn't about finding the perfect person or having this perfect relationship.
Yeah.
It's about choosing to show up for each other, even when it's hard,
Absolutely.
And working together to build a life that feels real and meaningful.
I love that. She's really challenging that fairy tale notion of romance.
Yep.
And showing us what real love looks like, with all the good stuff and the bad stuff.
Yeah, messy stuff.
Messy stuff. And it's refreshing to see that kind of honesty and vulnerability, especially when it comes to something as personal as marriage.
Definitely.
She also talks about this idea of armor.
Armor.
Yeah. like
Wow.
the protective layers that we develop to, navigate difficult work environments or social situations.
Oh, right, yeah.
She talks about her experience as First Lady and how she had to manage people's perceptions of her while also staying true to herself.
That's a tough balance.
It is. Trying to figure out when to, reveal your true self and when to keep certain parts hidden for your own protection.
Yeah, especially when you're navigating spaces where you feel different, vulnerable, like she often did as a Black woman in positions of power.
Right.
She talks about how her upbringing, her experiences, they taught her to be cautious.
To count the steps.
Yeah, to count the steps, to assess, potential threats.
And that caution can manifest as armor.
Right. It's like a shield to protect ourselves from judgment.
From harm.
Yeah.
But she also talks about the importance of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Finding ways to let your true self shine through.
Even in tough environments.
It's about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Between protecting yourself and allowing yourself to be seen.
It's a lifelong practice, learning to recognize your own armor, understanding why you wear it, and then making conscious choices about when to, to let it down a little.
Okay. And then, of course, we have to talk about Michelle Obama's signature concept, going high.
Going high. What's your take on that?
Well, for me, it's about choosing resilience, grace, and hope.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Over cynicism, over negativity, especially when you're facing adversity or when life just feels unfair.
Yeah, it's about rising above all that negativity and choosing to focus on what's positive.
Exactly. And she has some really great stories in the book that illustrate this.
Oh, yeah, like that time when their plane hit some serious turbulence on the way to the Democratic National Convention.
Oh, my gosh.
Everyone is freaking out.
Terrified.
Yeah, but she managed to stay calm. She even joked about how she just wanted to make sure she could still give her speech.
I know. Talk about grace under pressure, right?
Grace.
She has this incredible ability to just stay focused on the bigger picture.
Even when there's chaos swirling all around her. And when she finally got on that stage, that speech, it was electric, Powerful call for unity and hope.
Yeah. She also talks about how her father's experience with MS really shaped her understanding of going high.
Yeah, he faced so much adversity, but he never let it break him.
Never let it define him.
He always maintained his grace, his dignity, his sense of humor.
Yeah.
He taught her the importance of perseverance, finding joy even in the little moments and never giving up hope.
Such a powerful role model, not just for her, but for all of us.
Absolutely.
All right, so if we had to boil down everything we've talked about so far, what did you say are the key takeaways?
I think the big one is Michelle Obama's book. It offers some really practical advice for dealing with life's curveballs with, grace and with purpose.
Yeah.
We've talked about embracing our differences, finding comfort in small moments, understanding our fears, and being kind to ourselves.
Yeah. Practicing self-compassion.
Exactly.
We've talked about friendships, relationships.
Recognizing that armor we all wear.
Yeah, and of course, going high.
Choosing hope, even when it feels easier to just give in to, frustration or cynicism.
And through all of it, there's this message that each of us, we have the capacity for resilience, for hope, for creating positive change in the world.
It's about recognizing that inner strength, and using our voices and our actions to make a difference.
And that's something we can all strive for, no matter where we come from or what we're going through.
What I find really inspiring is how she emphasizes agency, having a purpose, even in the face of these huge challenges.
She reminds us that even the smallest actions can make a difference.
Yeah.
And that we have the power to choose hope over cynicism, kindness over judgment, and connection over isolation.
It's not all sunshine and roses, though.
No.
She's very real about the hard parts of life,
Yeah.
the struggles, the disappointments.
Yeah, like when she talked about learning to manage her armor as First Lady,
Oh, yeah.
That constant scrutiny, the pressure to be perfect.
It's fascinating to hear how she handled that.
It's something a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah, especially in our work lives.
We feel that pressure to conform.
You present a certain image.
Exactly.
But even when we feel that pressure, I think it's important to remember that vulnerability, it can be a strength.
Oh, absolutely.
It allows us to connect with people on a much deeper level.
Like when she talks about meeting Lin-Manuel Miranda at the White House.
Oh, I love that story.
He was so nervous about performing for the president.
Oh, I bet.
And she could tell he was a little intimidated by both her and Barack.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
But then his eyes met her mother's, And something about her expression, it just put him at ease.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful example of how these little acts of kindness and warmth can really make a world of difference. You know? Especially when someone is feeling out of their element.
It goes back to that idea of creating an environment where people feel safe to be themselves, to take risks.
To shine.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama talks about how she really made a conscious effort to create that kind of atmosphere in the White House.
To make it feel more welcoming.
More inclusive.
Yeah, like that story about inviting Danielle's daughter over for a play date.
Oh, right. And Danielle was so nervous about driving up to the White House that she got her car washed and her hair done.
Even though she knew she wouldn't be getting out of the car.
It's so relatable, right? We've all felt that pressure to make a good impression.
Oh, yeah.
And it just shows how Michelle Obama could make people feel comfortable and at ease.
Even in a setting as grand as the White House.
It all comes back to human connection, you know? Creating those moments of warmth and intimacy, even in formal settings.
It's something we can all do in our own ways.
Absolutely.
You know, we can choose to be the person who makes others feel seen, valued, who creates a safe space for them to be themselves.
And those small acts of kindness, they can really have a ripple effect.
It's true.
Creating a more positive and compassionate world.
Speaking of creating a more positive world, I think we need to circle back to going high, you know? Choosing hope and resilience over cynicism and despair, especially when we're facing adversity or unfairness.
It's about holding on to your dignity,
Yeah.
your grace, even when you're being challenged or attacked.
Right.
And remembering that our actions, they have consequences. And by choosing to go high, we might just inspire others to do the same.
She shares so many powerful stories from her own life that really show what this looks like in action, like that time with the plane turbulence on the way to the Democratic National Convention.
Oh, gosh, yes, we talked about that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how she stayed so calm and focused.
Right. And then when she finally took the stage, that speech was a powerful reminder that we can overcome even the most daunting challenges.
When we work together.
Yeah, when we remember what unites us.
She also talks about how her father's experience with MS shaped her understanding of going high.
Oh, yeah. He faced so much, but he did it with grace, with dignity.
He never let his illness define him or dim his spirit.
Right.
He taught her about perseverance, you know, finding joy in the everyday and never giving up hope.
He really was a role model, not just for her, but for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a reminder that we can find strength and inspiration from the people we love, and those lessons, they can help us through even the toughest times.
Michelle Obama also talks about learning to manage her own anger and frustration. She acknowledges those emotions, they're natural.
Of course.
But she's learned how to channel them in more productive ways.
Yeah, she talks about having a good support system, people you can talk to, confide in when you're feeling overwhelmed.
And the importance of self-care.
Right, taking time for yourself to recharge.
Yeah, sometimes I struggle with that, you know.
Oh, I get it.
Feeling guilty when I prioritize self-care. Like, I should be doing something more productive.
That's so common, but it's like she says, you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's a good one.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're running on fumes, you're not going to be effective anywhere.
And she's right. And you know what else I appreciate? How she talks about choosing your battles.
Yeah, you can't fight every fight.
No, and you can't right every wrong.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from negativity.
And focus on what brings you joy and purpose.
She's telling us to be intentional with our time and energy.
To make choices that align with our values.
Yeah.
Our goals.
And sometimes, you know, the most radical act of self-care is just saying no.
To the things that drain you.
And saying yes to the things that, you know, fill you up.
Love that.
Another big message that comes through is this idea of finding your voice and using it to make a difference in the world.
Which can feel really daunting, especially if you don't have a huge platform like she does.
Right.
But she emphasizes that we all have a voice. And it's about figuring out how to use it.
Through our work, our relationships, you know, just getting involved in our community.
But what about those of us who are still searching for our voice? Who are still trying to figure out what we want to say and how we want to say it?
She talks about the importance of finding mentors.
Oh, yeah.
People who believe in you, who support your dreams.
Yeah.
You know, that was key for her, and the stories she shares about her mentors are really powerful.
It's about finding those people who can guide you.
Yeah, support you.
Help you see your own potential, even when you doubt yourself.
Which brings us to representation.
Yes.
She talks about how seeing people who look like you in positions of power, it can be so inspiring.
It makes you believe that anything is possible.
Exactly. Like the story she tells about Stacey Abrams, remember?
Oh, yeah.
A security guard told her she didn't belong at the governor's mansion when she was a teenager.
Unbelievable.
Right. But that just made her more determined.
Wow.
And she became this amazing advocate for voting rights and social justice.
It's like those people who try to hold us back, they end up making us stronger.
Sometimes, yeah.
And Michelle Obama also talks about celebrating our accomplishments.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Acknowledging how far we've come. Giving ourselves credit for all the hard work.
It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and forget to appreciate our progress.
Yeah. But it's so important to celebrate those wins, big and small.
It's about cultivating gratitude.
Recognizing the good things in our lives.
Remembering that we're all worthy of love, joy, and success.
I love that. And she doesn't shy away from talking about the complexities of modern life, right? The challenges of navigating a world that feels more and more polarized and divisive.
Social media, you know, how it can connect us but also isolate us.
It's a double-edged sword.
She encourages us to think about the information we're consuming, to seek out different perspectives, and to, you know, have real conversations.
Even with people who have different views.
Yeah, which can be hard, but it's so important.
It's about building bridges and finding common ground.
We all share this planet, right? We have a responsibility to each other and to the world.
And that leads perfectly into the last part of the book, where Michelle Obama talks about building a legacy of hope and purpose.
How we can each contribute to creating a more just and equitable world, yeah. Picking up where we left off, I think one of the biggest things we can take away from this book is that it's okay to not be okay.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And finding ways to deal with those tough moments, that's really important.
It's so easy to feel like we always have to be positive and strong and resilient, but she really emphasizes the importance of actually like acknowledging our negative emotions.
Exactly.
Feeling them.
You know, give yourself permission to not be okay.
To not be okay.
And she talks about how important it is to have a good support system, people you can turn to when you're feeling overwhelmed or upset.
It's like her kitchen table, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Those close friends that provide that sense of home and belonging.
It's a good reminder that we don't have to go through hard times alone.
And she talks about self-care too.
Oh.
You know, taking time for yourself to recharge.
Sometimes I struggle with that, you know?
Oh, me too.
Like feeling guilty when I prioritize self-care.
I know, it's like, shouldn't I be doing something more productive?
Exactly.
But she's right. We can't pour from an empty cup.
That's such a good point.
If we're always running on empty, we're not going to be effective anywhere.
It's like trying to drive a car with no gas.
And she's also got some great advice about choosing your battles wisely.
Oh, yeah, you can't fight every fight.
You can't right every wrong.
Sometimes you just gotta walk away from negativity.
And focus on the things that really matter to you.
Exactly. Be intentional with your energy.
Make choices that align with your values.
Yeah, and your goals.
And sometimes, like, the most radical act of self-care is just saying no.
To the things that drain you.
Yes. And saying yes to the things that energize you.
Another really important message is the idea of finding your voice and using it to make a difference in the world.
Which can feel, honestly, kind of scary.
Yeah, especially if you don't have a platform like Michelle Obama does.
Right. But she makes it clear that we all have a voice.
It's just about finding a way to use it, you know?
Whether it's through your work or your relationships or getting involved in your community.
Right.
But what about people who are still figuring out what their voice is?
Like what they want to say.
Yeah.
She talks about mentorship.
Oh, yeah.
Finding people who believe in you, you know, and support your dreams.
Mentors have been so important in my life.
Me too.
Just having those people who can offer guidance and help you see your own potential.
Even when you doubt yourself.
Absolutely. And she also talks about the importance of representation.
Oh, yeah. Seeing people who look like you in positions of power.
So powerful.
Makes you think anything is possible.
Like, she tells this great story about Stacey Abrams.
Oh, yeah. I love that story.
A security guard told her she didn't belong at the governor's mansion when she was a teenager.
Just awful.
It's unbelievable.
But that just made her even more determined to prove them wrong.
And she went on to do incredible things.
Such an inspiration.
It's like sometimes the people who try to hold us back, they just end up making us stronger.
That's a good way to look at it.
And then she has this beautiful part where she talks about celebrating your accomplishments.
Oh, yeah. Acknowledging how far you've come.
Giving yourself credit for the hard work you've put in.
It's so easy to get caught up in everything and forget to just appreciate our progress.
It's so important to celebrate those wins, both big and small.
It's about cultivating gratitude.
Recognizing the good things in our lives,
And remembering that we're all worthy of love, joy, and success.
And she's not afraid to dive into the complexities of modern life. The challenges we face in a world that feels increasingly polarized and divisive.
It's tough out there.
Yeah. She talks about social media and how it could be both a tool for connection and a source of negativity and division.
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure.
She encourages us to be mindful of the information we're taking. Seek out diverse perspectives.
Don't just stay in your echo chamber.
And have those tough conversations.
Even with people you disagree with.
Which I know can be hard.
It is, but it's so important if we want to bridge those divides.
Finding that common ground.
She reminds us that we're all on this planet together.
We got to take care of each other.
And the environment.
It's about thinking beyond our own individual needs.
Recognizing that we're all interconnected.
Which leads perfectly into the last part of the book, where she talks about building a legacy of hope and purpose.
How we can all play a part in creating a more just and equitable world.
It's all about thinking bigger than ourselves, right? Like thinking about the world we want to leave behind for future generations.
Yeah, she really challenges us to step up.
To make a difference.
And she talks about how important it is to use our voices and our platforms, no matter how big or small.
To advocate for change, to lift others up.
And she reminds us that even like little acts of kindness, they can have a huge impact, you know? It's like throwing a pebble in a pond. The ripples spread out further than you think.
I love that analogy.
It's about recognizing that connection we all have.
Yeah, and that our actions, even the small ones, they can have a real impact on other people's lives.
Exactly. And it's inspiring to see how Michelle Obama uses her platform to fight for things she cares about.
Oh, absolutely.
Like education, healthcare girls empowerment.
Right.
You know, social justice, all of it.
And she doesn't shy away from tough conversations.
Nope, she dives right in.
Whether it's about race or gender or just the overall uncertainty in the world.
And she encourages us to do the same, you know, like to be open to those uncomfortable conversations.
To listen and learn.
Even when we don't see eye to eye.
It's about building bridges, finding that common ground.
Even when it feels really hard, which it often does these days.
It all comes back to going high, doesn't it?
It always does.
Choosing hope over cynicism, kindness over judgment, connection over isolation.
It's about understanding that we have the power to shape the world we live in.
And that even those tiny acts of courage and compassion, they can make a big difference.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the light we carry, what are you taking away from all this? What really resonated with you?
For me, it's the reminder that our stories, they really matter.
Yeah.
You know, by sharing our vulnerabilities and our experiences, we can connect with each other on a deeper level.
We create community.
Belonging.
We realize we're not alone in our struggles.
And when we support each other, we can all rise.
Beautifully said.
And she challenges us to think about how we can use our own stories to inspire others.
To lift them up.
It's about finding your voice.
Yeah.
And using it for good. You know?
Yeah.
To advocate for the things we believe in.
And make the world a little bit better, a little bit kinder.
Remember, your voice matters. And even the smallest acts of courage and compassion can create a ripple effect that makes the world a better place.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Michelle Obama's The Light We Carry.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring, and we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep shining your light.
Until next time.